For over 2,000 years, the Terracotta Army has stood in silence, guarding the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. These clay soldiers were not small figures, they were life-sized, each one built with unique faces, armor, and weapons. Lined up in endless rows, they looked ready to march into battle at any moment. To those who discovered them, they seemed like frozen guardians, locked in time to protect their emperor even after death. Qin Shi Huang was a ruler feared for his power and his harsh rule. He unified China but ruled with iron control, demanding loyalty and obedience. To make sure his power lasted forever, he built this massive underground army. The soldiers were arranged like a real army: infantry, archers, chariots, and generals, showing his dream of commanding even in the afterlife. For centuries, these statues remained hidden underground, untouched and unknown. When they were finally uncovered in 1974, the world was stunned. Thousands of warriors, buried for millennia, revealed the emperor's vision of eternal rule. Yet, behind their silent stares, questions remained. Were these statues only built as protectors, or were they hiding something more? This was not just art. It was a message carved into clay, a secret waiting to be uncovered. And that secret would change everything we thought we knew about the emperor and his army. Strange marks on the warriors. At first, people were amazed by the size and number of the Terracotta Army. Thousands of soldiers stood in perfect lines, with horses and chariots beside them. But after the first excitement faded, researchers began to notice something else. Tiny marks carved into unexpected places. These weren't obvious decorations or clear writing. They were small scratches, odd symbols, and hidden stamps found in strange spots. Some were under the feet of the soldiers, others behind armor plates, and a few inside hollow parts of the clay bodies. At first, these marks were dismissed as simple workshop codes or stamps showing which craftsman made which piece. Maybe they were inventory marks to keep track of production. But over time, doubts grew. Some of the symbols didn't match any known writing from the Qin dynasty. A few were so unusual that they appeared only once, on a single statue, and never again. Others were placed so deep inside the figures that no one would ever see them unless the clay was broken open. Why would anyone put writing there hidden away? Were they secret signatures or something more mysterious? These strange marks, once ignored, began to draw more attention. The closer experts looked, the more questions they uncovered. Perhaps the terracotta warriors weren't just silent guardians. Perhaps they carried hidden voices, etched in clay, waiting for someone in the future to read their story. Small symbols, big questions. For many years, scholars thought the little marks on the Terracotta Army were nothing more than workshop labels. They believed the workers used them like stamps to track which team made which piece, or as simple numbers for inventory. But as time passed, experts began to see things that didn't fit this easy explanation. Some of the marks didn't look like Qin writing at all. A few looked twisted, like broken forms of known characters, while others looked more like strange symbols than proper script. Even more confusing, some soldiers had many markings, while others had none. The differences didn't seem to follow any clear order. Why would one statue carry secret symbols inside its body, while the one standing right next to it carried nothing? Another puzzle was their placement. Many of these symbols were carved into hidden areas, inside torsos, under armor, or deep in the clay limbs, spots no one would see without breaking the figures apart. That detail raised bigger questions. Why would workers take the time to carve something in a place that would never be seen? The more symbols that were found, the harder it became to believe they were just casual marks. They hinted at something deeper, messages, codes, or even warnings. Small as they were, these tiny inscriptions began to shake the way experts understood the entire Terracotta Army. Hidden words in clay bodies. When experts looked closer at the terracotta warriors, they found that some of the most mysterious marks were not on the outside at all. They were hidden deep inside the statues. These secret inscriptions were placed under armor plates, inside hollow torsos, under arms, and even within the clay of the legs and feet. They were never meant to be seen by anyone walking past the soldiers. To discover them, researchers had to use modern tools like 3D scans and special imaging. What they found shocked them. Some of these hidden words carried emotions, not records. They weren't just worker names or numbers. They read like cries written in secret. One chilling phrase, found buried in several torsos, read, constructed by suffering. Another, carved inside the body of a high-ranking officer, said, "He took my name and burned it in stone." These words felt personal, almost like whispers from the workers themselves, trapped forever in clay. Were they speaking of pain, of fear, or of anger toward the emperor they served? The location of these inscriptions, buried where no eye could see, suggests they weren't meant for the living. Perhaps they were meant for the dead or for the future, hidden messages locked away until technology could uncover them. The Terracotta Army was no longer just a tribute. It was becoming a mystery filled with the voices of those forced to build it. When technology changed everything for centuries, the hidden marks on the Terracotta Army stayed out of reach. The statues were too fragile to break open, so the strange inscriptions remained mysteries locked inside clay. But in recent decades, technology gave researchers new tools, and with them, new answers. Multispectral imaging revealed symbols invisible to the human eye. Under certain kinds of light, faded marks glowed back into view, showing details that had been hidden for over 2,000 years. Then came 3D scanning and laser mapping, allowing experts to see inside hollow parts of the warriors without touching them. The biggest leap forward, however, was artificial intelligence. Using machine learning, researchers trained computers to recognize patterns that humans might miss. The systems compared the mysterious marks with thousands of known Qin dynasty characters and even older scripts, grouping them by location, size, and orientation. Slowly, a bigger picture began to appear. These weren't just scattered scratches, they were connected, like pieces of a coded message. Some repeated across multiple statues, while others appeared only once, as if placed with special care. What was once ignored as meaningless now demanded attention. Technology had opened a window into secrets buried for millennia, showing that the Terracotta Army was more than stone guardians. It was a silent archive of hidden voices, waiting for the modern world to finally listen. AI and the secret patterns. When researchers first used artificial intelligence to study the Terracotta Army, they expected simple results. Maybe the marks would confirm workshop labels or inventory codes. But AI revealed something far stranger. By scanning thousands of symbols across different statues, the system began finding patterns invisible to the human eye. Some marks repeated in unusual rhythms, almost like the flow of spoken chants. Others seemed connected by their positions, forming sequences that stretched across multiple soldiers. It was as if each statue held only a fragment of a larger puzzle. The computer grouped the marks by pit, by statue type, even by the side of the body where they appeared. Suddenly, it seemed the inscriptions weren't random at all. They might have been carefully placed as part of a secret design. Even more disturbing, the AI noticed that many marks carried emotional tones. Certain clusters matched phrases from ancient scripts linked to rituals, spells, and funerary rites. These weren't respectful notes. They spoke of pain, fear, and sacrifice. What once looked like scratches began to read like hidden cries, preserved in code. For the first time, scholars wondered if the Terracotta Army itself was more than a burial monument. Perhaps it was also a ritual machine, built not only to guard the emperor, but to seal away the voices of the dead. Disturbing first translations. When the first real translations of the hidden inscriptions were revealed, they shocked everyone. These were not simple workshop notes or names of supervisors as once believed. Instead, they carried personal messages written in secret places where no living eye was ever meant to see them. Some words were fragmented, others complete, but the tone was unmistakable. It was fear. Again and again, one phrase appeared inside torsos and under armor plates. Constructed by suffering, This chilling line suggested the pain of those forced to build the army. Another haunting inscription carved inside the chest of a general's statue read, "He took my name and burned it in stone." Scholars debated if this was a metaphor for losing identity, or a literal complaint from a worker erased from history. No Qin dynasty texts ever spoke in such voices. These were not praises of the emperor or signs of loyalty. They were cries of despair, trapped within clay for thousands of years. The warriors, once thought to be silent protectors, were now seen as messengers of hidden torment. With each translation, the image of the Terracotta Army changed. No longer was it only a monument of power, it was becoming a graveyard of human suffering, its secrets breaking free at last. Messages of fear and pain. As translations continued, the picture grew darker. These were not respectful tributes to an emperor. They were the hidden voices of people who lived and died in suffering. Many inscriptions carried tones of exhaustion, anger, or despair. One haunting message read, "I worked until my hands broke. Let him walk over me forever." It was carved under the foot of a kneeling archer, a place no one would see without modern scanning. Another chilling phrase found inside a damaged warrior said, "Here lies death and those who served it." These were not the words of loyal craftsmen. They were cries from workers who toiled under brutal conditions, their pain sealed forever inside the clay. Some messages suggested broken spirits, others hinted at curses placed upon the army itself. The more these marks were uncovered, the clearer it became that the terracotta warriors carried something beyond artistry. They carried the weight of lives sacrificed to build them. For centuries, their silence had been mistaken for honor. But with every inscription decoded, the truth emerged. They were not just an eternal guard for the emperor, but also a hidden testimony of fear, suffering, and perhaps even rebellion, preserved in stone for over 2,000 years. Constructed by suffering. Among all the secret inscriptions, none was more chilling or more often repeated than the phrase, "constructed by suffering." It appeared in multiple statues, always hidden deep within torsos or beneath armor plates, never on the surface where anyone could see. The placement itself spoke volumes. This message was not meant for the emperor or his court. It was buried, almost as if whispered to the future. Scholars debated its meaning. Was it a literal confession from workers who endured unbearable hardship? Was it a symbolic reminder that the emperor's legacy was built on pain and sacrifice? Or was it something more sinister, a kind of curse sealed into the clay? Unlike normal Qin dynasty writing, the tone was raw and emotional. It sounded less like official record keeping and more like a cry carved in secret by human hands that had no other voice. Each time the phrase appeared, it reinforced a hidden truth: the Terracotta Army was not just a grand monument of power. It was also a tomb of broken spirits, whose agony had been preserved in stone. Every soldier standing guard over the emperor carried not just a weapon, but also the suffering of the countless lives spent creating them. Ritual theories and dark fears. By the 1990s, some researchers began quietly suggesting that the strange inscriptions might not be ordinary writing at all. A linguist noticed certain marks repeated in a rhythm, almost like the beat of a chant. He believed they were never meant to be read silently, but spoken aloud as if during a ritual. If true, the Terracotta Army was not just built to guard the emperor. It was bound by spiritual incantations meant to trap souls inside the statues. Another scholar, an expert in ancient Taoist texts, thought the symbols resembled fragments of old spells used to keep spirits from returning to harm the living. He even suggested that the souls of the workers who died building the army might have been locked within the clay figures, forced to serve forever. The darkest theory went further. What if the inscriptions formed a massive ritual map across the entire site? Each pit, each soldier, each mark arranged to create a hidden design that sealed something within the emperor's tomb itself. None of these ideas were officially published, but the whispers spread. Were the terracotta warriors only guardians, or were they also prisoners of a terrifying ritual meant to silence the dead for eternity? Whispers of spirit traps. Some of the most unsettling theories claimed that the strange inscriptions were not just worker messages, but part of spiritual traps. A few Taoist scholars noticed that certain repeated marks matched fragments of ancient rituals designed to bind wandering souls. These spells were once used to stop restless spirits from returning to torment the living. When compared to the statues, it seemed possible that the workers who died building the army had their spirits sealed into the clay, forced to guard the emperor for eternity. Some high-ranking statues carried especially complex markings, as if their bodies were prisons for powerful souls. The idea was chilling. These warriors were not only guardians, but cages for the dead. Other whispers suggested the army itself was a massive ritual device, with each inscription forming part of a larger pattern spread across the pits. If true, then the entire site was a trap created to keep something locked beneath the emperor's tomb. Though no proof was ever published, the whispers never faded. Were the terracotta warriors really protectors of Qin Shi Huang, or were they unwilling souls chained in silence, cursed to stand watch forever? The more evidence appeared, the less they looked like statues, and the more they looked like spirit prisons. A ritual map beneath the tomb. One of the most extreme and unsettling theories suggested that the markings across the Terracotta Army were not isolated at all, but fragments of a much bigger design. Some researchers quietly speculated that when viewed together, across all the pits, statues, and placements, the symbols formed a ritual map. Each inscription was like a puzzle piece, positioned in a deliberate order, stretching across the underground complex. The idea was that the army itself was more than a guard for the emperor. It was part of a vast ritual system. If true, the soldiers were not simply protecting Qin Shi Huang in the afterlife. They were sealing or controlling something even greater, perhaps hidden inside the emperor's untouched burial chamber. Certain repeated marks seemed to align with ancient Taoist symbols of containment, suggesting a barrier meant to keep forces trapped underground. Some believed it was the souls of workers who died building the tomb. Others whispered it might be something darker, a force too dangerous to be released. No official studies confirmed this theory, but the whispers persisted. Could the Terracotta Army itself be a giant ritual lock, its silent soldiers standing not only as guardians, but as seals holding back a buried power? Forbidden research and sick scholars in the 1980s. Whispers spread about a secret team in Shan that dared to break open damaged terracotta statues, searching for the hidden inscriptions. At first, they reportedly found what they were looking for: strange markings carved deep inside torsos. But the project ended suddenly. A lab assistant later claimed that some members of the team became mysteriously ill, while others abandoned their work entirely. The tools and statues were quietly taken away, and no official reports were ever released. It was as if the whole investigation had been erased from history. Years later, in the 1990s, another group tried a safer method, using sound waves to scan for hollow spaces and hidden marks without cutting the warriors open. One researcher even posted online, describing odd echo patterns inside the statues and suggesting that some marks were placed in unreachable spots. But the post was quickly deleted, and the project was shut down. The silence around these studies only fueled suspicion. Why were these findings hidden? Were the illnesses coincidences, or warnings to stop digging deeper? To this day, no official explanation exists. The forbidden research left behind only questions. Questions about what secrets the clay soldiers are truly guarding. Cryptographers and the buried curse. In the early 2000s, a foreign research team approached the Terracotta Army with a new method: cryptography, the science of decoding secret messages. Using frequency analysis, they studied the repeating patterns of the strange inscriptions. To their shock, one phrase seemed to appear again and again, hidden in fragmented forms across the statues. When pieced together, it translated as, "buried alive for eternity." This chilling discovery suggested the marks were not random at all, but part of a deliberate warning or curse. The idea that thousands of clay soldiers carried fragments of a single, terrifying message was unlike anything ever proposed before. Yet before the research could continue, the team was forced to leave China. Officially, the reason was visa problems. Unofficially, many believed it was because they had come too close to uncovering something forbidden. The findings were never published in detail, but the whispers spread quickly among scholars. If true, then the Terracotta Army was not just a monument of loyalty. It was a burial ground echoing with the voices of the condemned, their torment sealed in clay. The cryptographers' work left behind one haunting question: were the inscriptions meant to preserve history, or to curse anyone who dared to read them? Seeing the unseen with scans, as technology advanced, researchers found new ways to study the terracotta warriors without harming them. Using 3D laser mapping and high-resolution scans, they could now examine every angle of the statues, even the smallest cracks or carvings hidden in impossible spots. What they discovered changed everything. Marks once invisible suddenly appeared on digital models, symbols etched into armpits, underarms, inside torsos, and even beneath the feet of warriors. Some carvings were so deep and precise that no tool or light from the Qin dynasty could have easily reached them, suggesting deliberate effort to hide them. One haunting message was uncovered beneath the left arm of a damaged soldier: "Here lies death and those who served it." Another, hidden in the foot of a kneeling archer, read, "I worked until my hands broke. Let him walk over me forever." These inscriptions were never meant to be seen by the emperor or his officials. They were buried messages, possibly cries of pain or even curses sealed away in clay. The scans proved that the Terracotta Army was not silent at all. It was filled with hidden voices, waiting thousands of years for technology to finally bring them into the light. The archer's haunting cry, one of the most heartbreaking discoveries, came from a kneeling archer, scanned with high-resolution 3D imaging. Beneath his clay foot, hidden where no one could ever see, was a chilling message: "I worked until my hands broke. Let him walk over me forever." The words struck researchers deeply. Were they the confession of a broken worker forced to labor until his body failed? Or were they a curse, binding the emperor to tread on the suffering of his people for eternity? The location of the message was symbolic. The emperor's eternal army would stand upon the pain of those who built it. The more experts studied this archer, the more unsettling it became. His face, like all the warriors, was unique, carved with lifelike detail. Was he modeled after a real man, perhaps the very worker who left the message? If so, his silent cry had endured for more than 2,000 years. To many, the inscription revealed a hidden truth: the Terracotta Army was not only a monument of glory, but also a monument of agony. The archer's haunting words turned clay into testimony, transforming the silent soldiers into witnesses of human suffering sealed forever beneath the weight of empire. A new general in Pit 2 in 2025, archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary inside Pit 2 of the Terracotta Army: a brand new general. He was only the 10th general ever discovered among the thousands of warriors, making his presence extremely rare and significant. Unlike the endless rows of soldiers in Pit 1, Pit 2 was arranged with more complexity, almost like a battlefield command post. The general was found in the center of this arrangement, surrounded by elite troops and special chariots, positioned as if leading them. His appearance was striking. Taller than the other warriors, with a solemn and powerful face, he was built to stand out. His armor was decorated with dragon symbols, representing royal authority and high status. Even traces of bright colors, reds, blues, and greens, still clung to his clothing, proving he was no ordinary soldier. But one detail puzzled researchers. Unlike lower-ranked warriors, this general carried no name or inscription. Was he based on a real person whose identity was erased? Or was he created as a symbol, a faceless embodiment of command? His discovery forced scholars to rethink the meaning of Pit 2. Perhaps it was not just another section of the army. It was the emperor's afterlife command center, with this silent general at its heart. Was it a real army plan? The discovery of the general in Pit 2 made experts question everything they thought they knew about the Terracotta Army. For years, the statues were seen only as spiritual guardians, built to protect Qin Shi Huang in the afterlife. But the careful arrangement inside Pit 2 told a different story. The soldiers were not just placed at random. They were organized like a real battlefield. Archers knelt in defensive rows, cavalry stood ready to charge, chariots lined up in formation, and the new general commanded from the center. This was not simple symbolism, it looked like a direct copy of how armies were deployed during the emperor's rule. Could the Terracotta Army actually be a blueprint of Qin's military power, frozen in clay? Some scholars believe the emperor wanted to recreate his living army underground, ensuring he could lead real battles after death. Others think it was more than a spiritual vision. It was a record of Qin's strategies, preserved as a military map for eternity. The missing name of the general only deepened the mystery. Was he a ghostly leader, created to stand above time, or a reflection of Qin's own presence? The arrangement suggested one unsettling idea: the army was not only art, it was war prepared for the afterlife. The mystery of vanishing colors. When the Terracotta Army was first unearthed, the world was stunned not only by the sheer number of warriors, but also by their vivid colors. Each soldier had been painted in bright reds, greens, blues, purples, and whites. Their lifelike faces, detailed armor, and unique robes made them look like a real army frozen in time. But within minutes of being exposed to air, the colors began to vanish. The paint cracked and peeled away, leaving behind the dull, bare clay we mostly see today. The reason was a special tree sap coating used under the paint, which dried out too quickly once unearthed. In just seconds, 2,000 years of hidden beauty was lost. Scientists tried to save what they could. In the 1990s, they used substances like polyethylene glycol to preserve the paint, but the results were mixed. Some warriors darkened, others faded unevenly. Later, experts turned to scanning technology, tracing microscopic bits of pigment left in folds of armor and clothing. Using computers, they recreated digital versions of the soldiers, showing how they once looked. The result was breathtaking: robes of purple and green, armor lined with brilliant red, faces full of lifelike detail. Yet, the original colors are gone forever, a reminder of how fragile history can be.